Hello YouTube. So one thing I've noticed about creationists is that whenever they really step into the realm of science and actual fact, they don't do so well. And they usually resort then to philosophy, which is, I guess, their sort of safe haven, because there's really no right or wrong answer in philosophy. It's up to personal interpretation. So the warning I have for this video is that some of the points here that I make are not 100% based on facts, because this is philosophy. This is only my personal interpretation of what I hear. So you can take what you will from it, and hopefully this will be maybe some sort of new insight for you. So the topic of the day is something I find really peculiar about the Christian faith in particular. I think this is present in all of the Abrahamic faiths, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe some other religions too, maybe some polytheistic religions as well, but this mainly applies to Christianity, and that would be the whole idea of free will. Free will, as defined by Christians, has always struck me as some sort of double-edged sword, you could say, or a two-faced coin. I mean, you get freedom, yes, and freedom is something we all look forward to, and at the same time it's a limited sort of freedom. It's a very oppressed sort of freedom, in the sense that we are free, and yet that comes with a lot of limitations. Many of these limitations I find to be completely ridiculous, and to the point where I find them unethical and, yes, reprehensible. Enter the story of Adam and Eve. Yes, the very first story in the Bible. And possibly one of the most flawed. What it comes down to is that Christians claim that Eve's choice was a choice of free will, and that God willingly let her do what he did so that we can be free. To understand why this is a piss-poor excuse to justify God's actions, how about an example? So let's just say I have a son who's 4 years old, and I say, "Hey son, you better not touch that hot stovetop or I'll be very pissed." And then I hide behind a wall to see what happens, and, you know, my son, being the curious little bugger that all kids are at that age, decides to take a chair and touch the stovetop, and he gets third-degree burns because of it. Then I walk from behind the wall and go, "Aha! You disobeyed me, son! Now you have third-degree burns because of it." And while my son is crying and in serious pain, I'll go, "Hey, I gave you the option to listen to me or disobey me. You disobeyed me, so, well, that's your problem that you're suffering now. And on top of that, I think I'll kick you out of my house now that you disobeyed me, because you had the free will to listen to me, but you didn't, so get the hell out of my house." What kind of father would you think I am, really? That would be a biblical example. But what about a more practical one? Now, in a more realistic view, I usually ask my friends and family, well, don't you care about me at all? I mean, if I was going to hell, as you say I am, then why wouldn't you try and convince God otherwise? If you think I'm a truly good person and that I deserve to go to heaven, why would you worship a God that would send me to go to hell? Why wouldn't you do anything about that God? And their response was, well, you had the free will to choose what you wanted to do, and if you chose not to accept God, well, that's your damn fault. My fault? Really? My fault that my ancestor, who the hell knows how many years ago, decided to disobey God, and now I have to handle their punishment? My fault that I decide to differ in opinion from a bunch of my brothers and sisters, and now I have to suffer for my own freedom of thought in a place of suffering that God himself created? Really? And doesn't God pre-set out our destinies? Knowing that he is omniscient, he would know that I'm going to be an atheist for the rest of my life. So that's wonderful. From the moment I'm born, I'm screwed, destined to suffer in hell for the rest of eternity. That's just fan-fucking-tastic. And again, I've made this comparison before, but in this instance, that free will you guys speak of would be like if I said, hey, you have the choice of listening to me or me popping a cap in your head. I mean, you could choose whether you want to listen to me and do what I tell you to do, or a bullet between your eyes. That's free will, isn't it? And on a somewhat related side note, with this idea of free will, I find it really odd how Christians are dead set against abortion. Like, we respect life, we respect God's creations. Horse shit. You only respect God's creations if they believe in the same thing you do. If not, well, they can go straight to hell, right? And it's not God's fault, it's not your fault, it's their fault. They had the free will to believe what they wanted to believe. And that free will happens to be the choice between your worldview and, well, eternal suffering. Who the hell do they think they are, having a different opinion than the rest of the majority of people? Freedom of speech and thought? Psh, yeah, right. It's only God's opinion that matters. Free will, as defined by Christianity, is not only barbaric and unjust at times, it also is a logical contradiction within itself. I mean, the very definition of free will, defined by Christian standards, is a bit of a misnomer, considering how God is the one pulling the strings. After all, he's judging our actions, he knows our actions, and yeah, we are judged for them. So that's not really free will if you're saying, yeah, I can do whatever I want because God says I can do whatever I want. See the connection?